Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. Today we're looking at Psalm 141, verses 9 and 10. Verses 9 and 10 bring up the end of this particular psalm, the last two verses. And again, we have more prayer. And this is the second half of, what we began in verse 8. For upon you, O Lord God, are my eyes. Thus I have sought shelter. Do not leave my soul destitute. I didn't mention that yesterday. That's verse 8. The last couplet, the second half of the couplet, thus I have sought shelter. Where's the shelter found here? What shelter is he talking about? Well, he's talking about the shelter that's in the Lord. You know, he becomes our shelter. Under the shelter of his wings do we come to trust. We've seen that, in the Psalms and several other things about the sheltering nature of God. He protects us. Well, just last week we had that statement that he covers our head in the day of battle. So that's that protecting power. When the good hand of God is upon us, that's sheltering. And so he says, upon you, O Lord God, are my eyes. I'm looking to you. You're my shelter. Do not leave my soul destitute. And of course, the Lord's going to answer that prayer. He certainly will. For his servant, he'll answer that prayer. And then today, 9 and 10, let me read those for you. Keep me from the hand of the trap that they have laid for me, and from the devices of the workers of iniquity. Let the wicked fall into their nets, while I, even I, escape. That's today's passage, verses 9 and 10. Notice again, we continue the prayer. He says, I've sought shelter. We know where. Do not leave my soul destitute. Now we come back to keeping. It's exactly how we started the psalm. The psalm began with, actually in the second section, verses 3 and 4, began with, set a watch on my mouth, keep the door. We go back to keeping. We're not keeping the door of my mouth, but we're keeping me from the hand of the trap. That is, the hand of the trap is the power of. So keep me from the power of the trap they've laid for me. Well, of course they lay traps. That's what the wicked do. We know that because we go back to our definition for the wicked in Psalms 9 and 10, especially 10, and we find out that that's what wicked people do. They're always laying traps for the poor, always laying traps for the afflicted, always laying traps for the righteous. So here's a good prayer. Keep me from the power of this trap that they've laid for me, from the devices of the workers of iniquity. And we had those who work iniquity are the wicked men, so we know who they are. And they're doing this work. That's what they do. And notice that he says, now the devices. He talked about the trap in the first part of 9, now the devices in the second part of 9. And there's plenty of that to go around in this world, isn't there? There are all kinds of devices that they try to lure us in. They try to keep us from following the Lord and entice us to sin. Don't fall for it. Ask the Lord to keep you from it. And notice, let's just go back and do a little review real quick here. Notice the requests of this psalm. He says, I've called upon you, come quickly to me. That's the very first one. Give ear to my voice when I call. That's the second request. Set a watch on my mouth. Keep the door of my mouth or of my lips. Do not incline my heart to evil words. Can you pray any of those requests today? Would that be an appropriate prayer for you to pray? Well, I'll let you answer that question. Let the righteous smite me. That's another request. Mercy, let him reprove me. Absolutely. That's a prayer that every one of us can pray. We need the righteous to reprove us, don't we? And then, how about this? O Lord, do not leave my soul destitute. Keep me from the power of the trap they've laid for me and from the devices of the workers of iniquity. I think if we prayed that prayer more often and more earnestly, ladies and gentlemen, it would keep us away from secret sins. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, and while I, even I, escape. Like the bird out of the net, so I escape. I fly away, because the wicked have fallen into their own trap. Reverse it on them. Switch things up, so now instead of catching the righteous, they catch themselves. Their sin will catch up with them. Next week I'm going to be reading the Christmas story, so I hope you'll join me then. The week following, we'll come back and do Psalm 142, and that'll begin on Tuesday of the week after Christmas. I hope you'll join me on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.